All right. So thank you for having us here. Of course, the very first task of the last panel is shorten your session. So be aware of time. We're gonna take it from there. So I'm really happy to host today the three panelists on the topic that I'm sure everybody wanted to discuss, especially that really the other sessions and the panels gave us a great intro to end up with this. I'm introducing you Martin Moeller, who just used to speak 5 minutes ago. So he's the head of artificial intelligence, right? And Gen AI for financial services in the Microsoft. Then I'm going to have to invite Nemanja Pavićević from Poslovna inteligencija, or right now rebranded company, right, of Solvership. And last but not least, Daniel Prins, the tech lead of ING Netherlands. So, given the topic, we wanted to ask you a question from the beginning. We did sit on a certain pattern. Is anyone from the audience willing to guess what pattern does the order of our sitting represent? Right, you see, we're going to have to use AI for that. So what would AI say about patternizing and profiling? We have a couple of physical appearances characteristics there, right? We have our hair or not. We have our glasses or not. We have genders, we have nationalities. And in this mix of the variables, the AI would for sure derive at least 3-4 patterns of how would the fifth person sitting on my right or on Martin's left look like. So this is where we are opening the session with, are we all thinking the same when talking about the AI? I feel really way too often that we are talking and discussing AI, but one is having in mind microwave, while the other is having a linear regression in mind, and the third one thinks of a robot who does it all. So that's where the hype is coming from, because most often we don't even know what we are talking about. So where did AI as the patternization or the algorithm start? I'm going to have to start from Daniel, who is working for a bank, let's say so, for a tech hub of a bank, to ask him where did it all start and what were the most rudimental mathematical forms of the AI, in fact.
Thank you. Indeed, there's indeed a lot of hype about AI, specifically because there's so many different versions of it. So we just had an amazing talk about how transformative generative AI can be and how that's not an improvement of the candle to get to a light bulb. But if you go to any data science university class, then the first thing you'll be taught about is probably linear regression and logistic regression, which is just econometrics 101, which we've all known since 50 years ago. You can argue that there are versions of AI which have existed before that. And I would say that there definitely has been certain leaps, such as the improvement to models and the greater availability of data and data storage and increased computing power. But to say that AI as a whole is something that came out of nowhere and is now there, and that we are now in the age of AI, whereas 10 years ago there was nothing, I think that's a bit misleading. And that also leads to some confusion as to which parts of AI are responsible for what exactly.
That's actually insightful because you just got me to a point where I want to say the common denominator between early stage and the current stage with the technology is probably how the models do learn. How do we learn as the human intelligence? So how would you describe, Nemanja, the role of data as the basis, as the fundamentals of any kind of AI?
Yes, exactly like that. I think and experience is supporting that. That data is the backbone of AI adoption. From these initial algorithms, data is used to train them, data is used to learn from that. So in additional adoption, data will also play a crucial role in that process. So I would just also wanted to add to Martin's presentation that this increase in productivity is, so we basically came to that AI is to mind what fusion is to nuclear power. So basically we will, and if AI brings at least, or generative AI in particular, brings at least the friction of its potential, then we could probably expect to have this decade in front of us as the most productive in history, probably, in regards to data processing and all the use cases in general, and of course in financial services as well.
You actually brought us a topic now for the processing. So we started math, as Daniel told us, and then there is a data processing, and this is where basically math was existing for so many thousand years before it was powered up by technology. So Martin, in a way that mobile phones and technology and the cloud technology did incontestably transform so many industries, including financial services, how do you think AI will quote next to them? Will it transform it more abruptly, more slowly? How would you see that?
It's an excellent, I'm not sure which mic to use now. It's an excellent question because for me, there are two dimensions to it. One is, what is the technology capable of? The second thing, though, is adoption and how open are we as an industry to really embrace it? And how open are we to really go through the transformative steps, some of which I outlined, to really make the most of it? So on the technology curve, we can, of course, think about, is there an upper limit in terms of how good AI will get? I doubt there is, to be perfectly frank. So the technology side allows us a very, very fundamental transformation. If we think it all the way to its end, you can get to a position as a bank where you basically have zero marginal cost growth of your business, where you can even fully automate any process in the bank, and you can run a fully, not just digitized, but almost humanless bank. You do need to make decisions which markets you want to go, which products you want to have, but you can fully automate everything else. Now, that's not yet possible, as we see that Gen AI is now morphing into AI agents, and we see the progression along those lines. They're not there yet. You still need a lot more in terms of reasoning, reflective, organizational, and operational capabilities. But that future is definitely on the horizon 3 years from now. Now, where I see our industry, though, is, and I hope I'm wrong, that we have thus far not really been willing to take the necessary steps to fundamentally rethink the way that banks or insurers work to make the most of this. We had an interesting discussion over lunch exactly about that one. If you do what I just described, financial services becomes the invisible piping behind everything in the world. Oftentimes banks and insurers don't want that, though. They do want to retain that customer interface, which I understand. But we need to be willing then to either embrace the invisibleness of the bank, or we need to take very, very bold strategic action to get to the customer interface again. And that is not a question of technology, that's a question of mindset. And mindset eats strategy every day of the week. So for me, it has the potential, to answer your question very bluntly, to very rapidly and very fundamentally transform our industry. It's a question, are we going to see more banks like Klarna that are just rapidly and very wholesale embracing it, or are we going to see a resistance and almost an effect like a prisoner's dilemma where nobody's moving?
Right. Resistance has actually a lot to do with the hype itself. The hype is so big that I've noticed a phenomenon, especially in banking, especially within a traditional bank, that less the people know about it, more they feel the need to talk about it. I will raise a little bit of the stake of this discussion and go on the more tangible manner. So Daniel, as somebody working for a bank, and a really huge banking group, and by the way, the one that is considered technologically probably the most advanced in the European soil, tell me what aspects of AI, pieces of technology of AI or possibilities, had fallen short on their promises, or so to say, they were mostly overblown to what they have actually delivered in the practice?
I think one of the first things that come to mind is the idea that AI will replace all the experts and all the experts are going to get fired. As Martin just talked about in his excellent presentation, you'll notice that every time he mentioned, this is what AI can do for people. This is how AI benefit people. This is how AI gives people superpowers. It's not that the experts are no longer necessary. There was a lot of time where people thought AI models will be very easy to build. You will be able to do this without data science. You will not need the expertise to build these models. You will just have some very simple interface. You will be able to use it, and you can hand it to anyone without any need. And especially for traditional AI and the AI models, we see that that really isn't the case. You still need those people with mathematical skills. You still need lots of software engineers. In fact, you need more these days to make sure that the implementation goes smooth, because there's quite a bit involved there. And also, apart from the experts, the idea that AI will do everything autonomously. Because we also see that having a human in the loop is crucial, especially from a risk perspective, especially for banks. You cannot have generative AI generate whatever content and feed it to your customers without having anyone check anything in terms of safety guardrails, without checking for discrimination, without checking for appropriateness. One sort of comical example that was posted online was someone asking the chatbot of a car dealer to help him solve, or at least to tell him the up-to-date version of knowledge and research on the Navier-Stokes equation for waves, and getting a perfectly good answer. Now, we at ING love customer service and we're willing to help a lot, but I'm not sure we're willing to branch out into being math tutors to students. So these sort of things still require people to be there. The same holds for KYC and anti-money laundering and financial crime things. You cannot have alerts and bank or account closures just being done automatically without some human in the loop taking accountability and really verifying whether or not this actually works. The idea that, also an example, you can just have loans rejected because the machine says no, that's it. None of that is really acceptable, and you need to have someone sitting there and making sure that everything goes as it should.
Let me maybe add to that one, because it's a fantastic point. You do need experts in the building of AIs, but also in the running of AIs. What that means, though, oftentimes gets a bit forgotten. Because if you need to now manage AIs, and that's where we're going. You see this at the very inception point now with Gen AI. Everybody has their Gen AI assistant, and I am the human in the loop, so I need to check. Does it make sense what that Gen AI just told me, rather than me just clicking forward to customer? Now, scale that up. As we're going further and further, we're going to have more and more Gen AIs working for us in different incarnations of my own, different parts of the processes that I do. And the future for us means that we are going to become AI managers. And everybody who's a manager in this room knows that being a manager is a skill set in and of itself. And now imagine you don't manage flesh and blood beings, but you manage AIs and Gen AIs, which don't always work as intuitively as talking to you and me. The example I can give is that, and we've all probably done this, when you ask any Gen AI today a question, it doesn't give you quite the right answer you were looking for. Most of us will basically go copy-paste the question we ask, repaste it in the prompt, and maybe tweak one or two things. When you've done this, and there's fantastic academic studies on this, you will see a degradation of output, so the output gets worse and worse, by up to a factor of 20. Because we're treating Gen AIs like tools, and they're not. Instead, you need to walk it through, well, thank you so much for giving me this answer, but I think you need to first look at this, then you need to look at this, and you need to look at this. And we all see that there's some chain of thought prompting in there. But the important thing for me is we need to mentally reframe the way we look at Gen AIs today. They're not just tools. We need to treat them like we do an intern that we're getting. And if you're a good manager, you're not going to just say, go and do it again. You're going to explain it to them. But that, for me, means becoming an AI manager and being the human in that loop, further up and further up, all the way to the board, requires us to really get a completely new skill set, and not just managers today. Everybody from top to bottom in the organization will need to learn this. And that skilling journey is going to be a very, very tough one for every organization.
Yeah,
that's actually a perfect point, because Nemanja, I was actually getting to this. I extract only 3 things and let you build on it. So what Daniel and Martin said, we still need mathematicians because there is a process of learning of a model. We still need accountability, which is where we are coming to a person. And then what Martin was saying, don't think of it as of a tool, think of it as a different way of doing things. So I like you now, because you said everything is fundamental of data. If you can describe a little bit this cycle of how one model gets generated, how does it get its logic, and how much time it needs for him to pass the way from a dumb first version, and all the versions of the V0s are dumb, they are not always published, but they're dumb, and to the version that can actually help reasoning.
Yes, I just wanted to focus on the points the colleagues mentioned. So I read a statement which is actually a really good description of what is happening. So it says like the changes are happening so fast like never before, and they will never be so slow as it is now. So if you don't get on that train, you will just be further and further away from the solution. So we have to, what I wanted to say, we have to invest in education of employees, of customers, of course, in iterative ways, but employees should be aware of new technologies, of opportunities they are bringing, because those are the people who are doing actual work and who knows all the processes, and in combination of that knowledge of processes, and when you put on this productivity boost generated from Gen AI, and all the possibilities this technology can bring, only then we can expect some new innovation to come from that point. So I think that is something in that manner what every organization, not only financial, but every single organization can work on to onboard these educational parts for Gen AI, just to make this horizon open for employees to see and to learn how they can benefit from all of that. So I think that is the major point, and that is like in usual technologies, it was like crawl, walk, and run. And in Gen AI, a lot of people say it's time to run, and then walk, and then crawl. So as Martin showed this Excel example, I mean, you have to use it immediately. It's immediately available. No need for, I don't know, costly development or education or whatever. Use tools which are there. Run first, try to catch up. Then you can go into some existing models, enhance them, tune them for your purposes. And at some point, when you are mature enough with knowledge and with experience, then you probably can go into building your own model and putting it all together. So from that perspective, there are now, when you ask how this is evolving, I would say also that we are talking about digital transformation while our back office is still analog. And that is the point we have to overcome, which is, of course, targeting and state processes, regulatory, banking, everything, whatever is there, also targeting each industry, not only financial services. And because someone mentioned today that we have a lot of issues in the process of digitalization, because we have to wrap around these analog systems and processes we have in the business to make them digitalized, although they in first place came out from our systems as digital assets. So basically that is something which can additionally boost this innovation process and digitalization and empowering employees and customers, and that will then go in best direction possible.
Right. Yeah, it's a really, really excellent point. We need to run because we are catching up. And I also heard you when you said, but we are still doing a lot of, as we say in our language, Potemkin's villages, to make it look digital when it's not, because there is a hype about it. That's why we are on the panel. So one question for all of you, and I'm looking forward, 3 different points of view. There is a top technology provider, there is a data analytics, and there is a banking inside. 2 pieces, but I will abstain from saying the opinion. I'd like you to tell me, all of you, your point of view of how would you prioritize if you were the one making all the decisions in a bank. Imagine a bank, and you need to catch up. And of course, the plot is the following one. So for those who don't know, you have a legacy system, most common, not so uncommon in the language that nobody else is programming, under 70 years old. You have also new speeding up technologies going on. You have more and more data to exploit, so I will not give more plot than that. You have customers who all of a sudden do not compare it only to the other banks, but also to some other different, very simple and very handy solution. How would you prioritize all of that? So how would you run using your words? Start in whichever order you want.
I can try to put my point on that. So, as you said, in these circumstances, this is again, although as old as Daniel says, it is in public, really new. So you can't do on mass scale acquisition of experienced people, like 10 years of experience, and you just can choose. It's only in academic circles, and that's the first issue. But you have to try to step on the train, whatever is applicable to your use case, and probably, as all initiatives, right, leadership is on the crosswalk. They should decide on which level of involvement or adoption of AI they want their system to be in perspective. We can't only measure current state because it is a speedy process. So basically that decision should come from leadership. Gen AI will affect all of the roles in organization. Once that is decided, there are again issues with employment, employees and the skill set. There are partners, as it was mentioned during this first day of conference, which could boost again this process of adopting any new technology. You don't have to go big bang with, full data analytics system, and then we will start with something, as Martin suggested. You can go step by step, doing use case by use case, but also having in mind that those data should be centralized, should be controlled, should be consolidated, should be of high quality, should be labeled correctly, etc., so that in some point in time you can use it for other use cases. So the temptation is there to start with silo data. Let's make this polished data for a single use case, and then another polished data for second. That is maybe not good way. On the other side, so I would send message: choose right decisions. Leadership should go with the curiosity probably, and disturbing the climate and culture and processes and everything with these new technologies, and choose wise partners who are experimenting themselves, who are on top of the challenges, and invest in employee productivity, employee satisfaction, which is also something that will boost in internal process improvements and everything. And eventually that will be visible to the world as a superlative customer experience with different channels of communication and everything what is needed for business to progress.
Okay, so am I summarizing your transformation strategy well if I say get on the train with the technology, invest in your employees, prepare your data for future, and be ready for some employees to fall off from that train if needed, right?
Of course. That's why partners are a good plan because of this fluctuation of...
I forgot about partners, you said that.
That's
yes.
right, that is the one which is solving that issue of fluctuation, should solve. So that should be the safe harbor for that journey.
I see. Daniel, now you being CEO for a while?
Yeah, one thing I would really confirm is that don't think too much about single use cases, but from the get-go, spend a lot of time thinking about scalability and spend a lot of time on your infrastructure, because working on a single use case as a sort of proof of concept is useful to sort of get some experience in how to set up these sort of projects. But at the end of the day, if you are working from use case to use case and you do not have the infrastructure, you do not have the data lake, you do not have all your data sorted out, you do not have standardized ways of how to set up these projects, then you will be working on a one-to-one basis and you will not get very far. So also, like Martin said, think about how to decide or how to design your entire way of working, how you want the end state to look like. And indeed, you need to start somewhere, and you're probably going to fail a couple of times and do stuff in an inefficient manner. So getting that experience in is good, but starting with setting up all the necessary tech around the actual models, I think, is one of the most important things.
Now, Martin, the question still stands, but I had another one.
I get the more difficult one.
Sorry?
I get the more difficult one.
Yes, you do, okay. Because you also got your individual speaking session. So please tell me, how, on top of what I asked, would you see also, or do you see, the difference of the pace of the adoption or the style of the adoption of technologies between the different regions in Europe?
Okay. Before I become a CEO for a moment, let me take one step back, because you said we're all catching up. The important point is we are leading as an industry. So the rest of the industries are catching up to us. But your other question now is exactly the point. Of course, financial services leading in the adoption of Gen AI doesn't mean that everybody's leading in financial services. So there are marked differences between the regions. Number one, when you look into two dimensions, the penetration, i.e. how many banks and insurers are using this technology, and secondly, the intensity. How broad, how big are they really implementing? To your point, is it just a POC here or there, or is it really at scale? The US is leading. Hands down, full stop on both scales at the moment. It's very closely followed by Asia, and which is interesting because normally Asia is always ahead of the United States, so that's an interesting thing to see at the moment, but they're very close by. Europe, Middle East, Africa, the region that I'm looking after, EMEA, is actually behind both of those. However, and that's the interesting thing, and you both alluded to it, the speed at which this is going is just phenomenal. So if I looked at the data beginning of the year, there would have been a large gap between those two frontrunners in our region. If I look at it now, last time I pulled the data, I think was September timeline or so, that gap has almost disappeared. So yes, there are differences between the regions, but they are closing very, very fast.
Those are regions adopting technology, right? This is what you answered.
Sorry?
I might not have been precise enough on my question because I was still, for you being in the banking role, when I said a catch-up, it was a catch-up by the banks to the technology in one region towards the other. Do you see the differences there? Because I'm under sensation that you responded me how the regions are adopting the technology.
In banking. So this was all for in banking. This was
right. Okay. So banking, it's in banking, right?
Yes. Banks in the US leading, banks in Europe catching up, but the gap is very, very small and getting smaller very, very fast, which is the good news for us.
It is. It is.
So it's really interesting, and also when you look into the use case spectrum that I showed, the more advanced use cases are actually being done here in Europe, which is interesting to me. But that has also to do with some of the more fundamental problems I think the US banks have in terms of underinvestment in some of their infrastructure, which now goes to your actual question, what would I do?
So you're now CEO, you couldn't wait.
Now I get to be
one?
CEO, which is lovely. For me, the important thing is when you say what you do first, it's the wrong way of framing it to me, because it's not a sequential discussion, and they're not really opposites. So yes, you need to get your data in order, there's no question around this. But right now, on average, 80% of banks in the world still don't have their structured data in order, let alone unstructured data, and that's internal versus external. If you want to enrich internal data with external data, only the pioneers are doing this. But while that's a maybe discouraging number, that almost no bank has all of their data in order, there's not a single bank that I know in this world that doesn't have good data somewhere. So start where you have the good data, generate that value. Similar, as I was saying, to pink unicorn hunting, don't do one thing after the other. It's not that you need to run a large data modernization project before you can get the first value. So pick the cases where you have the good value, and then the piece-by-piece approach that was mentioned earlier. That's, for me, the most important thing. The other thing is also that the way we modernize our data has changed. If you had asked me 3 years ago and said, oh, it'll take us 5 years to build a modern data platform, I would have said, yep, sad but true. If you ask it today, and we've done this here in Europe with large banks, small banks, you can do this in a year. If you really take an approach using the modern technology that there is, and use very well proven approaches by now, it can go very, very rapidly. So for me, it's not that you need to start either modernizing your core or your data first before you can use Gen AI. You can do these things in an agile approach at the same time. The core modernization that you mentioned is, for me, another example where it's not either or. So with one bank, I can't share the name right now, they're taking a really transformative approach, redesigning processes and their operations. They are starting with their lending business, which is at the heart of every bank, whether it's unsecured or secured loans. And right now, in order to make a loan offer, their advisors need to use about 6 different systems on average. Sounds probably familiar to some. I had some that said, oh, they're lucky we have 14, so there's a spread among the different banks. And what they want to do is they say, we want to go from 6 systems to 1 chat. And they're completely basically putting a Gen AI interface at the top. So imagine I'm the advisor, Daniel wants to buy a house here because he finds that this is such a wonderful area. And he wants to be by the seaside. Now, instead of me going into the risk management system and then going into the core banking system to find out how much money he has, maybe going to the CRM to see some of the flows, then going into the KYC system to find out what is he actually working, and then getting all the risk scores before I get to a loan-to-value ratio, you just upload this to a Gen AI agent. It reads what's basically in the prospectus, how much does the house cost. It knows through an orchestration layer and through, technically speaking, function scoring, so using different Python packages, it goes to all the systems that I set itself. And in milliseconds, you basically get a PDF document with my lending proposal that's spit out. So it goes into this for me and does this work. So the interesting thing about that is not just the use case, but it also means that if we design them the right way, you can basically decouple your user experience, whether it's client or employee, from the underlying core systems, and deliver the value of what might otherwise take 5, 6, 7 years when you modernize your core banking and other things. You deliver the value of this long-term transformation on day one for your employees. And this decoupling also means that you then have time to, at your leisure, modernize all of those systems in the background without doing disruption again and again and again to your people and your customers. So both on the data and on the core banking side that you mentioned, the core processes, I don't think it's really this either-or decision yet. You need to do one or the other. If you do it intelligently, you can run them in parallel, and that's what I see the leading CEOs of the banks that are leading the packs actually doing.
Well, thank you. So if I sum up all your 3 answers, that would be probably do not approach digital transformation as a project which is going to end. Just replace your current business management with a transformative, digitally transformative management taking the advantage of technology. So if I now, and to conclude the panel, you've been all, I promoted you to CEOs of the bank. I'm going to have to proclaim you what we all are. We are also the clients of the banks, I do hope. So now as a client, and really this is the last question of this panel, what would you like to see your bank offering to you in the next 2 years, but they're currently not offering, which would be relying on technology? So please, Nemanja.
Okay, so this is, as you said, excited both from perspective of data and analytics, or professional part, as well as a customer of banking. Someone mentioned he didn't enter banking branch 15 years. I'm one of those also. The first time app showed, I used it, and only when necessary, these analog processes are forcing us to do that. So I really expect a lot of innovations in this part, and looking forward to these services which are going to be offered. I mean, probably the most beneficial thing would be, because from my perspective, financial education is not present in the mass population as expected or as should be. So this part of financial advisory would be maybe really helpful for the people, because banks have data of their transactions, of their behavior, and could alert or advise how to, let's say, spend money, how to spare money, how to invest money. So those are parts which might be one of the use cases I would like to see in some banking application, especially when someone mentioned this cross-banking software which would control several banking accounts. For example, there it probably could be advised which banking account to use for which payment or for which transaction or something like that, so that people also has this benefit of saving money, although it's maybe in conflict with banks.
Yeah, I was just thinking of a model to maximize the commissions, and you were thinking to minimize.
That's right. It's for the person better. Now I'm customer, so
that's right. You know, but I've just emphasized.
So that is
a nice one.
This empathy really towards customer, something which would improve their life quality and financial situation. Probably would be beneficial.
Budget management, suggestive component, a really good idea. Thanks. Daniel.
Yeah, I can only confirm I do not want to set foot in an office. I just want 24 hours personalized customer support with memory of what we've discussed before, as long as I wanted to keep that memory. I also want my right to privacy. It's to only remember what I want, and a great user experience and easy interface on top of all that.
Good one. Are you also working on this type of a model? Because you personally are in a position to work on them.
I'm working a little bit on personalization, not that much. Mostly I'm working on lending.
But it's really interesting.
But the lending aspect, there I would say that switching from having to hand in lots of tax reports and files to having something where you can get a loan in 10 minutes, where everything is checked automatically because the bank already knows what your creditworthiness is, that is something that is also definitely something that I think is very beneficial.
Tough customers. Martin, please.
I might get even tougher than that. So for me, the one thing I would love to see from my bank or any bank is 24/7, real-time, high-quality financial advice. Because everything else isn't banking anymore. Payments isn't banking, that's a commodity. Lending shouldn't even be banking anymore because it's calculating a loan-to-value ratio, which should also be a commodity. So that's another thing where we're going. What really differentiates, and we all have been at this point at the first time when we had a good paycheck and we thought, what do we do with money? And then you think, oh yes, I need to invest it because it makes sense. And you think, oh my God, I could lose all my money. There's so many choices. This kind of financial advice, that's really the core and center of banking. But you don't happen to have these ideas or these feelings during business hours. It's usually on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday morning, and you happen to read something in the newspapers, and damn, should I react to this? Does this have any impact on me? And I want everybody, and not just ultra-high net worth individuals in the wealth management space, but all the way to every retail customer to be able to say, I have an idea. I have a wish, and get automated real-time 24/7 support, high quality for that. And that means we need to redesign the way that the advisors work, the operations work, and all of those things, but that would be my ultimate dream for my bank or any bank.
Thank you, guys. I really, this is the end of this panel. I want just to wrap it up in one sentence. We set the ambition high of busting the myths related to the AI and hype related to it. We ended up redefining the banking. So thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you.